Today, we're going to be talking about some exciting stuff regarding mothers and Mother's Day celebrations. I love this time of year. Springtime is out and about, and we're finally breaking out of winter, and there's no more snow here in Southeast Idaho anyway. And so it's exciting. I'm excited to have the people on today. So, Caroline, tell us who is joining us today.
Well, my name is Caroline, and I am one of your co-hosts. And today we're being joined by Mary Elizabeth Johnson and Maria Raass, two of our amazing therapists here at Christopher L. Walton and Associates. And welcome to the Navigating Your Mind podcast, where we explore the fascinating world of mental health and all of its implications for our daily lives. Each episode will conduct interviews involving experts, interesting case studies, and have lively conversations about the effects of living in our changing world and its impact on us. We'll be your guide as we navigate this ever-evolving landscape and discover how a healthy mentality can change our relationships for the better. So join us and let's start learning. And today we have a very special episode. We're doing kind of a Mother's Day special. And does anyone want to get started and kind of overview the topics we're going to be discussing today?
Yeah, today we kind of thought it would be pretty, amazing to talk about some things on our personal side, being moms ourselves, and how, navigating mental health and all of that, as well as just kind of like the balance of career, as well as our personal and professional development, into our years of doing all this.
Awesome. I think a good question to kind of start out is a little bit of background on your experiences with motherhood. If you kind of want to talk about your kids, how old they are, how old you were when you had them.
You want me to go first, Maria?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have 3 kids. I have my daughter. She's my oldest, and she will be 27 in 2 weeks. And she actually has 3 of her own children. So I'm a grandmother, and 2 twin 5-year-olds and a 5-year-old girls and a 2-year-old boy. And then I have 2 boys. My older boy is 23, and then my youngest is 21. And I was actually a teen mom, so I got pregnant with my daughter when I was a senior in high school. I was 17, and then I had my boys when I was 21 and 22. So those are my kiddos.
And then for me, my kiddos are young. So I've only been a mother for about 6 years. And my eldest is a girl, and I have 2 boys following her. I have a 4-year-old, and then the most newest one is 8 months old. And so I actually had kiddos after I finished college. So that was 26, 27, and then 31.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to jump in here on this Mother's Day special. I am remarried. I have a blended family, and my oldest child is 30, and then I have twins who are 25, and then my wife's oldest child is 25. So we have trips now. It's kind of funny. And then we have a son who is 22, and then she has a daughter who's now 21. So we have 6 kids in our blended family, and it's been fun. Lots of Mother's Days, lots of ups, downs, and all arounds. All those guys.
Fun. Well, I guess one question I have to kind of start off is for you, Maria, but feel free to jump in whenever, Al. But what do you wish you would have known as a new mom before you had your kids?
I think definitely like the ugly side, the stuff that you guys don't talk about or we haven't really talked about, because I think there's a lot of portray of motherhood is beautiful. It's an amazing journey, and being able to be responsible and bringing life to this world, and being able to just kind of help raising it. And I think that was definitely like, oh yeah, I'm totally supportive in trying to experience that for myself. But then comes a lot of the anxiety a lot of the overstimulations, a lot of the guilt or shame that definitely I learned as I was doing this. And I kind of wished, even for my own mom, I think people were able to talk a bit more of that process. I think I would have been able to have more tools in my toolbox to avoid any of those long nights staying up and contemplating like my mother journey in general.
Mhm.
I
That's
think
sorry, go
for
ahead.
me, oh, sure. I think for me, I just really wish I would have grasped the concept of time, and really that when you're a mom and you're tired because you've got, I had 3 children, 5 and under by the age I was 22, and it was a lot, and just trying to get through feedings and making sure nobody was suffocating the other child, or that when they were running around they weren't running into sharp objects, or trying to get into things that would be harmful. You can feel overwhelmed and exhausted, and it seems like you're never going to get a break, and then you blink and your kids are all gone and out of the house, and you would sometimes give anything to have one more day where they were just little and you could sit down and play with them. And sometimes you felt like you were under all this pressure to keep your house clean, and doing all these different tasks all at the same time, and just missing out on small little moments. I wish I would have understood that concept just a little better than I did.
Mhm. That actually, I read this article the other day that kind of relates to that, where this one was talking about how she's like always tries to be grateful for the small mundane things like cleaning up her toys after her kid, because she knows one day she's going to look back and be like, I wish I could do that one more time, or have that be my issue right now. So I think that's a really interesting perspective. Awesome. Well, what is some jumping into more like, the side that no one talks about? What do you think is something that you didn't hear anyone talk about being a mom until you were a mom yourself? Or like something you wish that you would have known, like a taboo topic, anything like that?
I think it's a little bit kind of like what Elle was sharing about this expectation of having these other priorities being done, as well as maintaining the mother side of making sure your kiddos are safe and fed and clean, and again, molding them to be respectful little people, is the part of like moms can be fun. Moms can actually loosen the reins of like, I have to get the house, I got dinner ready, I gotta do all these things. And there's just this expectation I think we naturally put on ourselves. Society probably does it as well, but I think in our home, I think we do that. And we feel like we have to manage every little thing, which is kind of like that micromanaging behavior that comes out for like moms being hovering in helicopters and not really trustworthy in other people's like features or whatnot, questioning everybody else's intention with our kiddos. And I think that's that part where we're like, that's our anxiety. And I think we did not talk about what anxiety started when that baby just comes in, and then you're just filled with like these uncertainties, fears, that definitely just carried on to every stage of your kiddos. But I don't know, Elle, do you feel like that kind of alleviated once you were empty nesters, or do you kind of hold on to some of that anxiety?
I think it just shifts and morphs into different kinds of anxieties about your kids, because then, the great thing when they're little and they do something, it's usually something that as a mom is fixable, right? You can clean up the mess. Even if it's a stain in the carpet, you can replace the carpet. And then as they get older, and they're out in the world and they're adults now, or even just when they get their driver's license. And I just remember, practicing when they get their permits, and you really are like, where is my brake on my side, of the car? And it's just the anxieties, I think, shift and change, but they're definitely still there even when they're adults and they leave your house.
Mhm. It's so interesting. Do you think that as a mother and like having carried your child, do you think that those anxieties are different from the ones that the father experiences? Like, do you have just a different level of like feeling protective over your kids?
I think definitely. I think that's another expectations that mothers put on themselves, that no one else will love our children more than us. And I think that's something I continue learning every day, is that my husband's been part of this journey just as much as I have. But I like have this tendency of even protecting them from him. And he'll look at me like, those are just as much as my kiddos. And I'm like, oh yeah, like 100%. But it's, I think that part of holding, carrying it, it's so natural to be like, I did it all. You didn't go through this. And so I think there's that, again, expectation that moms feel that no one else can love our children more than us.
Mhm.
Well, you're biologically attached to them, by carrying them, the oxytocin attachment by birth. So yeah, you're going to be attached. And I think for a lot of dads, it takes us a while to grow into that attachment with the kids. Sometimes it takes, some dads really jump into it pretty quick, and other dads take a little while longer.
Mhm. Did you ever feel a little bit left out, Christopher, while, the mother of any of your kids was pregnant?
Yeah, I felt left out in the beginning because the kids really wanted mommy a lot more than daddy. They needed mommy for nutrition and all of that kind of stuff with breastfeeding and that type of thing. So yeah, there was definitely I think some initial jealousy to a certain degree, because I wanted to be, a full-fledged dad and be in there and having fun, and for me it kind of took a little while. And I was appreciated having a good mom to the kids who was taking care of a lot of that, because a lot of times kids just are waiting, so dads, we can hug and cuddle and hold our kids when they're little, but a lot of times we have to turn them back over to mom because mom is waiting. It's like, I need my baby back. At least that's what it felt like to me, which was great, because they have the tools to be able to take care of those things where dads would just change the diapers and whatever. So, I think that I think it's great that you guys are talking about this today, and that we can get to have an opportunity to learn more about each of you.
Mhm.
I
And-
think
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think another thing that nobody really talks about, or something with motherhood, is postpartum depression, and then depression in motherhood. And so, just because of how the hormones are shifting and changing in our bodies, and then really having to stay home those first several weeks, and just the stress and the pressures of what that looks like, and the unknowns. And even if you've had a child before, each child is different, and they're not the same. And so I think a lot of people don't recognize or understand what postpartum looks like, and it's not talked about, because motherhood's supposed to be this beautiful, wonderful thing. And what happens when in the middle of the night and the baby's crying and you're crying, and you just don't want to be a mom at that moment? What do you do in that moment? So I think that's something that's not talked about a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, especially talking about the lack of sleep that we go through. Newborns are getting the amount of sleep that they are getting because they're sleeping, eating, diaper, and then they do it all over again for 6 weeks or more, right? But then the moms are the ones where during those moments that the baby's sleeping, we kind of are doing other things or whatnot. And so, sleep was something I think I felt like I've never actually gained back, even in this stage of my life, even like kiddo having me in 8 months. But before him, I felt like I don't think I've ever really slept full 8-10 hours since having kids.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. It really is a commitment. Have you ever, either of you, worked with any patients who like regretted motherhood once they started getting into that like hard situation?
I think this is that shame or guilt that moms carry, because I think every mother have that moment that we are exhausted, tired, unsure, lack of confidence, not getting a lot of reassurance or validation. So we just kind of pile it all together. Is this worth it?
Mm-hmm.
Am I doing well? At least that's kind of like my experience, but as well as like my clients that come in.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's really interesting that you talk about too, like, is it worth it? Like, how am I doing? Do you think that there's a lot of like almost competition between moms to do like the absolute best that you can or be comparable to what you see around you?
I definitely think there's comparisons. And one of the things I'm grateful for is when I had my kids, it was before a lot of all of this technological advances, before all this social media. I mean, there was Facebook, but it wasn't really like it is now. And so I think I still struggled with comparison, and you still always, wherever you were, the you know, moms at your kids' school or moms that you were at working with and what they were doing, and you're feeling like you never measured up or you weren't enough in certain areas and you really wished you could be better in that. And you know how you'd have some of the kids that would have these perfect lunches and they would be well balanced and it would even be like stamped pretty, and they'd have little notes, you know, all those kinds of things. And but now it's just, I think with social media and Instagram, TikTok, and all this, it's even more a struggle to feel like you're not measuring up to what motherhood is supposed to look like in a lot of people's perspectives.
And even just doing like simple errands, like going to the store or the restaurant, if your kiddo is the one that's having a moment where they're screaming or just having a reaction, the first thought goes like, oh my goodness, I'm that bad mom. Like, I am embarrassed that I can't even control my kiddo in this moment. So I think there's even that judgment of even like when you finally leave the house and you're going places and that moment, like normal behaviors that a kiddo goes through. But yeah, we kind of put it upon ourselves that it was like somewhat our fault
Mm-hmm.
in that moment.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the strategies you have to deal with that like shame or guilt that you feel in those moments?
Well, I think for me, I think it really starts with just lifestyle preparation. I think I was very prepared becoming a mom. So I got kind of like my whole life in order in a way to kind of support me, because I kind of felt like I was going to have my own struggles, not knowing what that actually looked like. And so I think moving on, being able to kind of have open communication with my partner and being able to advocate for help was huge. That I think there was natural shame with asking for help, but once I got really comfortable, just like, okay, I'm human. I can't do all this. And asking for support and being direct of what that type of support looks like helped me just navigate through kind of like the dilemma. And I think being able to share that with my clients too, for them to be like, what are your type of support and what kind of support are you actually looking for? And being able to be really direct with your communication, because I think for fathers, they don't know what they're supposed to do in those moments, because they're kind of like, wait, you're just coming to me overstimulated. The kid's crying. What am I supposed to do? And so being able to learn kind of like what you're wanting and then conveying that in a healthy way allows for that transition to be comfortable. Like, okay, he knows what he's doing. I can step away and pick up kind of like my tears from the floor and regain some confidence in myself.
And that you trusted him and that you trained him also, that you trained him to know what to do. And some dads are pretty hands off. other dads are willing to be more involved. And I think that weighs a lot on moms based on how much support they're getting from their significant other or their family. Some moms don't have that at all, though. And I think that's very overwhelming and stressful for moms for sure. What are your thoughts about that? Level of support.
Well, I was going to say the level of support is huge. It makes a difference in many different things. Just having that time to be able to regroup, to be able to get some rest so that you can be present and mindful in the moment. I think that's one of the biggest skills, is being able to regulate yourself, to be able to get yourself into a calm, relaxed body, because your capacity to do that is going to really determine your kids being able to do that. So your kids can't get regulated and calm down if you're not. So if you can have that support as far as just basic helping you with household tasks, getting rest, but then also support with education. So for me, being a teen mom there was a lot of shame around that. And so being able to have the education and support of what does motherhood even look like, and how do you do some of these things that, I had babysat and I loved kids. So I was probably more educated than most of the girls that I was in a class with. But I think that helped, just knowing even what to expect at the different developmental stages, so you can know how to play with your child. You can know what areas of their brain are developing and how to stimulate that and set them up for success later on. Because if you can do a lot of the preparation work up front, you save yourself so much just heartache and challenges later on when they become teenagers. So I think if we can have the supportive education, that helps a lot too.
Yeah, but like, yeah, talking about single moms, or talking about, moms who don't feel like they have any type of support, that definitely is going to increase even more, anxiety, depression, maybe even some trauma from this experience, just because you just feel alone, overwhelmed, and you don't have the opportunity to escape and ground yourself or regulate. And then there's a lot of that shame too, and not having an outlet. Definitely is a huge problem. And I think I definitely see that in our clientele who didn't have that type of support. And so being able to, I guess, figure out what your type of community you do have access to, resources. I mean, hospitals are really great at providing care, postpartum support groups right after, follow-ups. You have your primary care, your OB. They all have these resources to help navigate through these challenges. And again, therapy as well. And so I think even though we may feel shame that we don't have personal support, we definitely have professional support that are there willing to provide care. We just kind of have to reframe our negative thinking to open up to those opportunities.
I think it's really interesting you bring up the different kinds of support that are available outside of like a partner. I don't know if you've seen this term on social media, but something that's been really trending lately is the term single married mother, where there's, like a lot of women that identify with this term and feel as if even though they're married, they're a single mom and they're doing all of the tasks that are associated with their kids and maintaining the household. So I think it's really important to bring up those professional resources too. And I guess, do you have any advice for women that feel like they're in those situations and how they can seek out those professional tools?
I think I was just going to say, like, letting them know that they're not alone, that I think having social media does bring that awareness of that this is something, and that just normalizing that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to seek out those professional supports, and to be able to if they have insurance, they can just look at the back of their insurance card. They can ask around to their friends if, looking online, doing a search online for different specialties of, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a professional from like a therapist. It could even just be like I was saying, there's those educational pieces for maybe if you're wondering if your child's fallen behind in a developmental area, you can talk to your pediatrician, and they have like early childhood intervention programs that the state has that they can refer you to.
I mean, prevention is key. So having these important conversations with your partner beforehand is definitely can help alleviate any of this type of stressors afterwards. So being able to attend parenting classes together, being able to just have the conversation of parenting style of what that looks like, and then kind of like what Chris said, like at the first few months, that was a lot of, relying on the mom at first, and then dad coming in. So being able to have dad involved with the feeding, and being able to just have him sit there and watch and and talking with you during that process. Like breastfeeding shouldn't be a moment where you're like, I'm just gonna take the baby, feed him on my own or whatnot. This is an opportunity where your partner can be a part of it. But you're also talking about stay-at-home moms. So there's definitely going to be a difference in, primary caregiver versus like more of a secondary where they just come from work. All right, tell me what happened today. How can I be, I guess, involved with my kiddos? And I think that term that you shared is very much kind of like those stay-at-home moms where they feel like they are doing a lot of it because it essentially seems like their workload. And I think being able to just have that conversation of balance. How do I get my partner involved into the care of the kids?
Awesome. Chris, I would love to hear your input on that too, and how you've been able to find balance as a father.
I think it's hard. When we were doing it, we were not around our family, so we really had to divide and conquer a lot of the tasks. So cleaning up, or getting the dishes done, making dinner, stuff like that. So because some things in the initial stages, probably 0 to 6 months, were pretty much mom issues. Staying up at nighttime, maybe giving her some extra sleep if the babies are crying. But with our oldest, he was 3 months premature, and so he was in ICU for the first 3 months, and so that was rough in and of itself. And then when he came home, there was a lot of monitors and things and stuff like that. So we were both kind of hyper vigilant, waiting and see what's going to happen with that. And here we are 30 years later, he's fine. He turned out okay, but it was a lot of work in the beginning. And then we had twins. And so that was even complicated because she could only breastfeed one child at a time. And there were other things. So we really had to kind of pick up that load. And we relied on our friends that we were going to school with at the time. So I think that was helpful. And it was helpful to be able to be willing to ask for help. I think it's hard to ask for help. So we did that. But I think a lot of times new moms are afraid to ask for help from people they don't know very well because they don't, their mom may not be around or something like that in those circumstances. So I think a lot of moms will take double duty and make sure that everything is okay, because a lot of times they don't want their babies to be around other kids or stuff like that. Other moms have to put their child in daycare pretty quick, after a couple of weeks, and they're having to put their kids into daycare because of financial need and what's available. And I think for those moms, that's really difficult too. Can you guys, do you have any experience about that? Anybody had experience or known anybody in that situation?
Yeah, my daughter, she went to daycare at 6 weeks old because I started college. And so that was really challenging to feel comfortable leaving her with strangers at 6 weeks old. And, I was going to school full time, so she would have to be at daycare full time. And so that was really hard. And then when I would pick her up, trying to manage a schedule of trying to do schoolwork and have playtime and be able to do all my other motherhood stuff at the same time too. And I had family support, that was great. But even with the family support, it was a really tough time. And so it's hard to know what how you can balance that when you have so many things on your plate, and when moms who have to work, who have to be able to provide income, and you don't have a choice. Like, technically, I guess school was a choice for me, but it was still difficult to. I knew if I wanted to provide a good life for my child, I needed to get that schooling to be able to provide. So it's just knowing that sometimes it's okay, and that you're just doing the best that you can with the tools that you have at that time.
Yeah, and then dropping them off at daycare and having a sense of guilt when you're driving away and you're hearing your kiddo crying for you. Like, that was very difficult when we had our kiddos go in. They were older, so they were at 1 and 2. But we only did it for a month because then COVID hit, and I felt like that was kind of like a blessing, because it was like, we can't open our daycares. And then I actually made the sacrifice of not working and became a stay-at-home mom during the moment, just because we didn't have the ability to put them into daycare so I can work. So I think that was like kind of like a moment for me to be like, oh, I could finally like just be more involved with their care. But I remember, just even to this now, I feel like I get a bit of PTSD just like driving away. And so I think I worry when they, I guess, hit that college year and you're supposed to drop them off at college and drive away. I can already anticipate that is going to be the next difficult moment for me. But yeah, I have like 13 or 10 more years, but yeah, I can already experience or anticipate that fear.
Mm-hmm. See, it's kind of funny. I have the opposite view. I don't have any kids, but I worked at a daycare for a few years in high school, and it really is. It was hard because the daycare I worked at was a lot of like richer families. Like, the tuition was $15,000 a year, which was ridiculous. But it was really hard because in almost every family, both mom and dad worked, and they worked very demanding jobs. And so they would drop their kids off at like 7 in the morning, and a lot of them put them in the after school program too, and wouldn't be able to pick them up until like 6 or 7 at night. And you could see, like, it was, I think, hard for a lot of the parents to just not see their kids all day and like come pick them up, and they're like missing milestones and firsts and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, that would be hard, not being involved. And I think that is like another thing, to have these conversations with your partner of kind of like, I guess, identifying what type of lifestyle you want, to where it helps alleviate a lot of this anxiety. So being able to work only part-time, and my hours allowed for me to be the primary caregiver, still allow them to go to their appointments, school, and then still be able to like attend my work, the professional side, after all that. So I think finding what works for you and your partner, or just what works for you and your household, can definitely be a good start of just being mindful of the challenges that mom goes through.
Mm-hmm. I do think it's interesting too that a lot of times when this conversation of like at home childcare comes up, it's almost always the mom that's kind of expected to be like stay at home and be with the kids all day. Do you think that it's because like motherhood is just different from fatherhood, or just convenience?
We actually, my husband actually was a stay-home dad for our 2 kids first. And that was because he was in college still. So I was able to work full-time. He had school. He was able to do his classes while still taking the kids. But then I will work my schedule around his. So because of that, it actually gave us a lot of comfort knowing that the kiddos can go to either of us with so much comfort, because we kind of had that opportunity. And there's a lot of understanding and empathy from him when I do now have all the kiddos, and he's like, oh no, you need a break. I've been there. I know what that feels like. I think the only difference is I think he still ended up doing the more of the chores and tasks at home, even when he was the one at stay-at-home parent. But then now when I was stay-at-home, I was doing everything. So there's still a bit of some default behavior that falls upon moms. But I think that was just something on my comfort is I prefer my cleaning standards. So I think being real and being honest with your partner or with the expectation that helps, again, create a very safe environment for your household.
Mhm.
Well, and I think I wanted to mention too, I think there's some moms who really enjoy that time that they go to work, and they don't struggle as much with they feel okay knowing their kids in a safe environment, and that they're well cared for, and that they're getting those interactions that they may feel inadequate to provide for them. And so I think just knowing yourself to know what you need is the most important, because if you're somebody who does better if you can go out and work for a little while and then be able to show up and be present at the end of the day with your child, is going to be a better environment than staying home because you feel that pressure and shame that you need to stay home and you don't want to, and then you end up really carrying a lot of resentment and bitterness, and your child's gonna sense that and pick up on it, and it's gonna create attachment issues and really prevent that healthy attachment from happening.
Mhm. Do you have any advice for those moms that are struggling with finding balance between their work life and their motherhood?
I know for me, the having a plan and having a schedule was so important, because I mean there was a time when I was going to school full time, I was working full time, I had an internship, and it was a lot. And if I didn't have a schedule and I didn't put in times for just enjoying and having fun and doing family time, I would not have made it through those times. So I think it's just really finding out what is really the priority in the season you're in, because your kids are going to require different amounts of time and resources from you depending on what stage of development they're in. And so recognizing what that is, and then knowing how much time you can kind of adjust and adapt and what you can incorporate. And so really knowing that it's for just a season. That's kind of what I started with, that it seems like it's never going to end or it's never going to change, and then before you know it, they're really out of the house. So just knowing it's not forever.
And again, developing your community. So connection is very valuable to your time. So when you're talking about balancing professional and personal, like your career, being able to talk about the struggles with coworkers. Everybody's a parent essentially. Even if it's a father or whatnot, everybody has this understanding and a level of guilt from being at work or using it as an escape to be like, oh, I'm glad I'm kind of a bit away from them. So being able just to talk about it and create that environment at work. So then when you go home, there's a bit of that connection too. So connections is just kind of helpful because you're occupying yourself with something, distractions. Just venting, just being able to just get validation is probably huge in minimizing a lot of that guilt. Is because there's a mother next to you doing the same thing. But because there's a lot of shame of like saying it or asking for help, we kind of avoid the opportunity for us to find that out for ourselves. So just, I think being transparent of your own challenges just really creates a safer space for you.
Mm-hmm. I think that therapy is a good place to be able to vent without fear of that shame.
I mean, I would hope so. That's what we hope for every time we have a client come in, is that we do want to embody this like really safe environment, in that we are active listening and validating, reassuring them that we hear their struggles, And we are here to help them provide any resources and tools to navigate through all that.
And I also think as therapists is that we've had training on how to be able to help with different stages of child development, not just newborns or young children, but also toddlers and through latency age years, and also especially in adolescence. We see a lot of kids and adolescents in treatment. And just kind of going back to some of these other ideas is play with your kids, have fun with your kids, enjoy your time with them. Even when, cooing and cawing and giving direct eye contact to the baby when they're very young creates an attachment from them to you and you to them, and being sweet and cute and cuddly and offering lots of tactile connection, which is so important, especially with little kids, very baby. They need to have, I believe, skin to skin contact with mom and dad, in healthy ways, and that's happening, with breastfeeding and stuff like that. Those are very important. I think we should come back and talk about different stages and of child development and what's going to be helpful. Because sometimes when kids jump from being babies, sometimes mommies miss their babies and they want to have another baby because they miss all of the emotional connection they get from that child. Because the child's moved into toddlerhood, and it's like the terrible twos and no, and don't tell me what to do, and and all that kind of fun stuff. And those stages are hard, I think, for moms and dads, but I think especially moms, because they miss that really close connection with that baby who loves them so much. And 2-year-olds love you too, but it's just not the same because they're like, yeah, I want to be my own independent self. Now I can walk and feed myself and all that kind of stuff. And I think those are just fun years though for dads and moms. And so hopefully, if couples are together, then that's good to do together. But if they're not, then dads are important too, and grandparents are important, or siblings, aunts and uncles are important to be helping to raise and mold that child, to be spending time with that child as they continue to grow up and have fun, enjoy the opportunities, the stages along the way. Because Elle's an empty nester, I'm an empty nester too. So we're leaving all that up to Miss Maria at this point, which is great for her to be going through all of those stages. So,
and
yeah.
And I actually still play with my kids. So we do about once a month, we'll do an online game. And my youngest, he's stationed in South Korea right now. And we all get on Discord and play online games together. So don't stop playing with your kids. It's a way to keep connected to them even after they leave your nest.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I love that. I think that's a great idea, especially since you guys have some distance between you. I think I know a lot of parents that think that after 18 and after their kids move out, it's just like you're done with them. Like, that's it.
Yeah, I wish it was kind of like that with my parents, but no, my parents always find a way to kind of tease me a bit, question my mothering or whatnot, because you're like, oh, just wait, she's gonna be just like you. So I think there's that fun attachment with your parents when they're able to transition with you. Because I think we all had a hard time when I left the home and went into college and have my own home and whatnot. But being able to stay connected by phone, by, like kind of like what Elsa is, playing video games together, all that, it just kind of just helps all of us feel still attached, even though we're kind of very distant in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think that's been a big thing in our life too, because we have kids all over the country. So we try and have a phone call at least, or FaceTime every other week at least, or we're with the kids who are in town here, as we go out to dinner, they come over to the house, we have dinner. Usually they want to come over to our house and eat our food. So still, things haven't changed in some ways. But it's good to maintain that loving connection. And is it always perfect? No, because a lot of times we love our kids, but we don't always like our kids, especially as they start to get older. They start to make their own independent choices, and sometimes that isn't what we would think was great. But it's okay, I see these things as learning opportunities for kids, as they are growing up and making their own independent choices. And just like the toddler, he's saying, no, I want to be my own self, and he's going to run with and then sometimes they fall down and sometimes they get hurt, and they need to be, allowing, in my thinking, allowing them to fail, and then allowing them to pick themselves up and allowing them to move forward with it. So, we need to probably come back and talk about parenting at some point, and talking about how to raise healthy children that they're going to be innovative, motivated, and creative in their lives, and with balance of boundaries and all that kind of thing. So there's a lot to talk about on this topic for sure. But what are some final notes or ideas, tips for motherhood you guys would like to leave?
I mean, speaking on the fun part, I like this concept of a yes day. So this idea where you allow your kiddos to kind of decide what they would like to do for the day. And when you start it early, they get to actually make those decisions really well, because they just want to have fun. If you wait later, they're kind of maybe some resentment from all the other disciplines or challenges that you guys went through that it might actually project it during that moment. So starting young and being able to have these like, hey, what would you like to do? What would you like for dinner? And just saying yes, even though it's like, no, we're not having that. But it's the part of trust. I am putting some comfort and trust into my kiddos, and for them to kind of like decide what is appropriate, right? They know the rules, not to run around with scissors, not to touch sharp objects, and not
Right.
once have they've ever actually wanted that, because we use it in beautiful ways. We make art. We cut up our vegetables in that way. And so being able just to kind of give some pressure onto the kiddos of yesterday, I just think that's like a fun opportunity for all of you.
I think just really finding a time for yourself as a mom, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, but really just honoring that space to connect to yourself and being able to get yourself grounded and to know, am I overwhelmed? Am I tired? Do I need support? And when you can have that time for yourself, that really helps recenter and ground you to know what your needs are. So making sure you find that time, however you can, that it doesn't have to look the same for everybody, but just finding that time for yourself somehow, some way in your day.
Yes, and setting those boundaries does not make you a selfish person. That's something big for my moms to kind of like learn from themselves, is that just because you're asking for these few minutes for yourself does not mean that you're being selfish and wanting to run away from your kiddos because you don't like them. You're protecting yourself so that you can be the best person in that moment when you return.
I think that's some great advice.
Something we did when we were from the kids, when they were toddlers, probably all the way till now, is we would ask them either at dinner or at bedtime because we would divide and conquer and go into each of their bedrooms or whatever. And we would ask them to talk about their good of the day, something that really was fun or was great for them. What was their bad? What was their sad of the day? And what was the funny? And so we would do the good, bads, and funnies a lot. And so now when all the kids get together, they all want to do good, bads, and funnies, and they're 30 years old. That's what kind of we condition them to be focused on these things. So anyway, so the thing is, there's this process. There's an opportunity to talk about what was the good of the day, the bad, and we want to leave off on the funny, because hopefully we can learn how to laugh at the end of the day before people go to bed or after dinner, and that we're having our connection time. So it's really important that we're offering those. I think it's a tip that's really good to carry into your family.
Mm-hmm. That's something we do a lot in icebreakers that I've noticed. We have like a rosebud and thorn. You guys have heard that one before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
So that's kind of, you have your rosebud and your thorn of the day. Your rose is the best part of your day. The thorn is something that happened that wasn't the best. The bud is something that you're excited for in the future. And I love doing stuff like that because I know that there's like something wired in our brains to make us remember the bad parts of our day more than the good parts.
Right.
So I've noticed that when you force yourself to think through what was the best part of my day and, sift through all the good parts, it really makes you a lot more appreciative of life, a lot more optimistic. And I feel like my whole worldview changes when I started focusing on the good things that happen and not the bad things. I think it really has done a lot for me.
But it gives you develop insight that maybe it was just a bit of your day that was bad. And then
Mhm.
actually the rest of the other time was great. And so, like you said, sometimes it's just nice to kind of put it into that type of timeline of like, okay, what other things were really happening and not just focusing on the negative pieces.
Mhm. Yeah, I really like the adding something funny into. I think that's a great way to make it like people want to share what was going on with their day.
Yes, moms can be fun. Like moms are
Yeah.
funny. I mean, so I think being able to bring humor in everywhere you can is
Mhm.
great.
Bring some funny jokes to it. I mean, dad jokes. I got a dad joke book given to me once, and I would use the dad jokes. So
So maybe
that's,
that's something that we have to develop is a mom joke book because I don't think
yeah,
that
that's true. And not be so serious all the time. Sometimes mommies want to be so serious because they want to be protective of those babies all the time. And then the dads are the ones that are fun and having a good time. That's the way we connect to our kids, is having a lot of interactive fun time. But that's hard. And my big thing is I want dads. I'm hoping dads will be supportive of their moms for during the scope of bringing kids into the world, all the way up till through adulthood. It's so important, and that because moms a lot of times feel lonely and disconnected and inadequate, like we were talking about before. So offering, even with single moms, is to try and get their parents or friends involved in having more of a community involvement around raising children, because just doing it all by ourselves is almost an impossible task. And so sometimes moms get really frustrated with things. And so how to be able to help support them and hold them up and give dads an opportunity, in my thinking, to get in and have helping time with the kids. And that's even coming down to changing diapers. That was a struggle thing for me, just so you know. It was pretty embarrassing. I won't tell you what exactly I did with that, but it was hard. It was a thing, because I'm very sensitive to smell. I'll just tell you what I did. I basically wrapped a towel around my face, and as I would change the diaper very, very quickly. And then it was like, gotta breathe in over here and then come back over here and breathe in over here and come back over here. But I did that, and so it was kind of one of those things. And then one time I picked up my Austin when he was, I don't know, he was very young, and didn't have his diaper on, and I didn't know a whole lot. Anyway, I picked him up and I got a surprise from him, and so these were experiences that were terrifying and awful in some ways, but we all sit back and laugh at it now. We're all laughing about it, about all the dumb things that dad did. So that they were embarrassing or hard. But there's motherhood is such a beautiful thing, and Mother's Day is such a wonderful thing to celebrate, as we're thinking about appreciating the people who brought us here, and also the people that we are today, and our children that we're bringing, and the opportunities and the joys of that, and also the pain and the agony. Boy, there's a lot of pain and agony with having kids. And my thinking about it is there's this refining fire. It actually helps moms and dads hopefully bond better, or moms to become more whole inside of themselves, and dads to do the same. But to celebrate motherhood, this is a beautiful time of the year to do that. And I appreciate you guys being on our podcast today and talking about this.
Yeah, that's a big one. Happy Mother's Day to both of you. A little early one.
Thank you.
And happy Mother's Day to everybody who watches this. And if you're a kid, go back and say thank you, Mom, for creating me, because you would not have the good, the bads, and the funnies without your mama being there. So mamas are very important.
Thank you for joining us on the Navigating Your Mind podcast. If you want to learn more information or set up an appointment with any of our therapists, please visit our website at eastidahotherapy.com. Please enjoy the rest of your day. We wish you and your mom a life of peace, joy, and happiness.